So let's jump right into the third value-added video. This is perhaps the master overall organization of information in the climate web with the idea of making sense of it all. So through each of these thoughts that you see on the left-hand side, climate change is a wicked problem. What do we know and not know? The fingerprint of climate change, what's coming, what are the risks, what does success look like, what solutions might get us there, what are the barriers to progress, what's the good news, what's the bad news, why not just adapt? These are large categories of information that you can access through this particular thought with the idea of really making sense of it all in terms of why we are where we are and how we might get beyond where we are. Related to this are the trillion-dollar questions of climate change. These are the questions that we've identified as the truly big questions that we ought to be thinking about. How risky a planetary experiment are we running? What would climate success mean and what would it require? Can we overcome our evolutionary biology to tackle climate change? Can climate change transition from being a culture war topic to being an ethical consensus? How will nature-based solutions play out? Now, none of these trillion-dollar questions have a cut and dry answer. What we've tried to do is provide our insight, our view of these questions to help you rapidly come up to speed on the big questions surrounding climate change. Now, what about user cases for specific audiences? If you click on the pins drop down in the web client, you will see a general tour thought. And if you click on the general tour thought, you will see a number of user cases here, whether journalists, K through 12 teachers, policymakers, philanthropists, college level faculty. These are all use cases that we've then structured materials for specific to that particular audience. And I'm just going to focus on journalists as an example, in part because there's so much information on this particular page for journalists. And so in terms of the journalism user case page, I can scroll down and there's a lot of information organized here because we know that journalists might be looking at different things. Some of the big topics, what do we expect to happen? What does success look like? Some of the insights pages that might be particularly relevant, oil sector chronology. Why should you ask for scored carbon offsets, climate cartoons? How long is long enough for offset permanence? A mini course in climate change psychology. These are all things that might be of relevance for a particular journalist. So we've made them easy to access here. Some key news and opinion headings. Activism and the necessity defense, 100% renewable future, carbon neutrality, climate fiction, climate insecurity, climate engineering, diet and climate. You get the idea. These are all topical headings for news stories, providing a lot of different potential directions for someone to go. And then a few dashboards, climate science, timeline, climate law and litigation, business climate risk, direct air capture, carbon pricing. These are just a few of the dashboards that we're pointing to here. So we do the same for the different user cases in terms of pointing individual audiences to some of the materials we think might be of most relevance to them. And last, in terms of these 3 videos focused on advanced curation in the climate web, we actually help you search the internet for things that aren't in the climate web. We're constantly searching the internet for stuff to add to the climate web, but we can't possibly have everything in the climate web that is available on the internet. We may have missed things. We may have simply decided it wasn't relevant enough, et cetera. But One interesting way to use the climate web is through pre-populated search terms. So we have identified thousands of search terms for all kinds of sources, and I'll show you that in just a second. But they're collected here, and you can see the different collections: climate futures, climate risk, climate science knowns and unknowns, climate solutions, barriers, good news, bad news. We have collections of searches under each of those categories. And here is one particular collection: climate change is a wicked problem. So each of the child thoughts that you see there is a pre-populated search term for one particular source or social media platform. The first one is Wikipedia. Then you get into Google search, Google images, YouTube, Vimeo, Twitter, Quora, which can be a great source of information, Google Scholar, Reddit, and there are others. So each of these are search terms, and in the desktop version of the climate web, I can simply hover over a particular search term and it will instantly open up and populate in the notes field on the right-hand side. In the web client, you actually need to click on the search term and open it in a tab in your browser. But the idea here being that for hundreds of topics, we have provided you with thousands of actual search terms to see what else is out there, to see what might not be in the climate web yet, etc. Another way to use the climate web to save a lot of time in coming up to speed on issues that you're particularly interested in. And that wraps up this third video associated with the value added aspect of the climate web.